First of all, you're not sponsored by a Swiss cheese company, I presume.
No,
But these
we're
are
not.
obviously, there's a lot of holes in the car, Darren.
There is, yes.
Why all these holes? What's the purpose of that? Is that just to look cool, or has it got a function? If you're a fan of motorsport or cars in general, it's hard to ignore the fastest growing motorsport in the world, drifting. Now it's exciting, it's churning out tyre smoke, it's running walls, and it's pretty insane. But we often don't ask how they're built or what makes an amazing drift car. What's the engineering behind it? Or also, what are all the little nuances that we don't know about? Well, we didn't really know, so we decided to come to the experts. And the specialists we came to see were Group D here in Buttevant and Cork. These guys started off 15 years ago making drift cars and today are still pushing the boundaries of what's possible. We're going to check out how a standard road car goes to a fire-breathing competitive Irish Drift Championship car and what work goes in between. Let's go check it out. So we watch drifting every weekend, like you guys as fans, but we're certainly not specialists in building cars. In fact, it's very, very complicated. So we needed somebody who had a little bit of experience to explain it to us. So this is Mr. Darren McNamara. Darren, who not only competed in the highest level in Formula Drift for 8 years, but also built the first ever purpose-built drift car in Ireland. Which brings us to something very similar to this, because this was the first car you ever built, a Toyota Corolla A86.
Yep, this is an A86, basically stripped down to just a bare shell. We do that with every proper build, really. You know, you can just take a road car and add pieces to it, but if you really want to go and build a purpose-built drift car, we take them all down, bare shell, no doors, no panels, and we basically cut off anything we don't need and just attach bits we do need. So
you take perfectly good road cars that people are driving around every day, and then they end up like this, and this is the starting point.
Exactly. So they're making quite a lot of money now, and then we take all the bits off them and just bring them down to a bare shell and start again.
So essentially, if everything that you're adding into the car from this point is custom or purpose built for it, the original car actually gets pretty much left behind at this stage.
It does, yeah. I mean, one of the major things is, like, as you can see, the front is pretty bare and the back is pretty bare on this, is to make them kind of more crashable, more fixable. You do have a lot of rear clips and walls and things like that. So a stock car, there's only 2 or 3 times you can get away with hitting it, but you have to replace the whole thing anyway. So we kind of make them for the job.
Yeah, a lot of people wouldn't think you actually go back to this level with a drift car. It's crazy. So we've checked out the bare bones of where we start.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to something that you're working on right now, which shows sort of how far you can go. So most of the time we go to a drift event and we see these cars all shined up with their graphics, making tons of smoke, but rarely do we get to see them just before they're finished. And this essentially Mad Max looking thing that you've got here at the middle of the workshop is your new drift car before all the panels go on. So this is essentially getting us a chance to look at what goes in under the skin to make them do what they do. So this is a 240 SX?
Yeah, it's a 240, which is basically an S13. They're all the same thing. What we get to from what you saw before is this is a full tubed, caged, front, rear, the whole lot, all the safety gear, everything done. Big tunnel for, a big power gearbox that can handle a lot of power, so it doesn't really fit. We make everything fit so that it's easy to walk on and it makes our life easier at the track. That's why we start from scratch and get to this stage.
So essentially what you're saying is over 15 years of developing drift cars, you're trying to make them easier to work and making lots of mistakes. You get to a point where you learn from each mistake to get to a point where you are now saying this is the easiest way to make it competitive, but to also work on it at the track.
Exactly, and you have a 5-minute rule or something like that, and if you don't make a 5-minute rule, you examine why, and if we had a bit more room here, a bit more room there, or what we do, what we're doing, a bit more accessibility, then we would have made it, and then we take that onto every other car.
Cool. So let's start with the front end. Obviously, what I'm noticing here is there's a big bit missing of the standard car. So this is obviously, you're refabricating the front of the car essentially.
Exactly, yeah, and that's, as we touched on before, make it more crash friendly. So, and we can bolt off sections of the car, like the front bumper bar. We can't cut too far back or whatever, but we try to keep things replaceable, like the fenders, the bonnet, make all that kind of replaceable.
So what I'm also noticing is that I'm pretty sure all the suspension parts that I'm seeing in here in the wheel wells are not from Nissan.
No.
So you've actually designed these yourself to give the maximum amount of, because obviously drift cars, they're always on counter steer or angle or lock or whatever you want to say. and they obviously need much more than a standard car to make them competitive.
Yeah.
So you've obviously gone and researched this to make sure you get the perfect kit in there that you can actually, it's the most drivable and competitive setup.
Exactly. So there's a few ways you can go about it without getting too in depth into the geometry. But we basically get the big wide track, and that is just for clearance. Is the main thing really, just to get, because we run quite big wheels and semi-slick tires. So we need the clearance for the amount of lock we have, which is kind of totally different to any other motorsport. The shell, chassis itself, tube work can be quite similar to other forms of motorsport, space framing, things like that. But when you get into the details, as in the suspension and stuff, that is kind of drift specific.
And it's, a lot of people say that the front end of a drift car is quite different than every motorsport, but the rear end is something like a drag car. It's trying to get the maximum amount of grip you can out of the car, which is sometimes a misconception of people when they look at drift cars. They think it's all about being loose and making loads of smoke.
Exactly.
But it's actually the opposite, right?
It's actually the opposite. What you're trying to do, if you think about it, is you're trying to get grip from a spinning wheel, which is a very hard thing to do. In all kinds of motorsport, your wheel is never spinning, and if you are spinning the wheels, you're losing time. We're trying to get grip from a spinning wheel, so the rears tend to be quite aggressive setup, but the front is totally different to any other motorsport. I mean, really, you take a drift car to time attack it, a grip race it, it's not going to be that great. It's not going to turn in as such, is going to be the biggest problem.
And obviously, a lot of people might not understand is, one, why the wheels on the front of the car are always at a very strange angle. They're always cambered very negatively in.
Yeah.
Why do they do that? Why do drift guys especially have, like, some people might think it's just for looks or to look cool, like it's something like a stance thing, but it's actually very, very functional.
Yeah, I mean, you have that in all types of motorsports. Certain camber, you see it in Formula 1 on TV, you'll notice how much their wheels are cambered. It can be track dependent for their kind of motorsport. For us, it's all to do with like wheel tilt on angle and things like that, depending on what kind of setup you're running.
So essentially, it's obviously if you were driving in a straight line, you'd want the most amount of tire on the ground, but you're mostly on angle, so the wheels twist, and that's why the guys put the camber.
And then you get a lot of force through the front because you get tire deflection, something you might never think of, and actually the wheel ends up running fairly good contact patch anyway.
That's crazy. So obviously this is something that, because drifting doesn't have a heritage of 60 to 80 years of motorsport engineering behind it, you guys have had to figure this out on your own.
Yeah, we figured it out. I mean, it comes from, it's obviously a technique used in a lot of motorsports, and we've done a lot of motorsports before drifting was ever even invented, so it's something you take across and you always play with, you know.
So let's talk a little bit about the fabrication on the car. Now obviously you've cut a lot of the car away. It's all very, what I can see here is it's all about saving weight. Now why would being as lightweight as possible make that much difference in a drift car? Because obviously you're trying to get grip to the car.
Yeah.
Would weight on the rear wheels not make it more grippy, or why try and make it so light?
It would, depending on, I mean, your balance is really what you want. Well, your distribution, front to rear, is what's going to give you grip or no grip. Sometimes it's very dependent. The race car is a totally active thing. This car we're looking at, we've got the town on it. I mean,
there's not much left of the original car here at all.
You're talking about, you know, doing a build like this is mental hours. You know, you take it even from your car here behind us, which is fairly basic. You know, it's beautiful and it's really nicely done, but it's not actually kind of reinventing the wheel, which we are here, which is just a showcase for our business. You know, for sure. We never have to go this.
How much fabrication time would you think building a car like this would take? Do I even want to ask?
It's crazy. I don't want to make it up because I know how long we spent at it. Then, you know, that kind of way. We spent all winter at it, months and months. It's crazy, but we are doing lots of stuff just to show that we can do it.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to have a look at was some of the more interesting fabrication features here that you probably wouldn't see on every drift car.
The back.
Mostly around the rear of the car. First of all, you're not sponsored by a Swiss cheese company, I presume.
No,
these are obviously, there's a lot of holes in the car, Darren.
There is, yes.
Why all these holes? What's the purpose of that? Is that just to look cool, or has it got a function?
It's got function. It's different. It's got a lot of functions, basically. Again, it showcases the workshop, the fabrication level, what we can do for you, basically. It's also part of something that I've started playing with at the end of our Formula D is a bit of smoke management, and it's something that people don't play with. So we're looking at getting the tire smoke out of this car, creating what would be a low pressure area where the smoke would stay. So we're constantly keeping the air moving, leaving the smoke out. So we're looking to blind our opponent, basically.
Because a lot of drivers as well find that the cabin of the car is filled with smoke. So obviously you can't see out, you don't know where you're going.
Exactly.
So is this sort of a management of getting the smoke out of the car and having it sort of, as you said, go as far and wide as it can?
Exactly. So we are looking to blind our opponent, basically. It's something, as the power level in FD got crazy, it ended up being a real problem seeing. and if you can't see where you're going, if the other guy can't see where he's going, you have a great chance of winning. Now, this has a firewall. What we call a firewall is like sectioning the driver compartment off from like the fuel tank and things
Yeah,
like
because I was
that.
just about to say, normally a fuel tank in a car sits somewhere around here.
Yeah.
Now it's sort of in the middle of in the middle of the back of the car.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for it being there? Is that just to protect it from a rear impact, or is it something?
Yeah, I mean, safety is obviously very important, and you know, I don't like them hanging out over the back with some of the impacts we've had. Now, if you have a really expensive impactable bladder tank, which is something that you can Google if you don't know what it is, but you know, it's something that takes a hit in an accident. It's designed for motorsport. Really expensive. Currently, the regs that we use don't require one. You know, if you build a rally car like a Mark II Escort, they don't require them either. You know, so it's something that, you know, I like to put the tank in the middle then. Now, for me, it's too high where it is, but we do use what we do sell. So
Yes.
this is our tank you can buy off our website, and it works absolutely brilliantly. It's no surge, it's really intelligently designed.
And of course,
by me.
where the fuel tank would be,
yes,
you put the radiator of a car. Now, if you're new to drifting, putting the radiator in the back of your car doesn't make a whole lot of sense,
No, it
because it
doesn't
should
at
be
all.
at the front of the car where the engine is.
Where the air is, yeah.
And I'm no expert, but I imagine that the water to cool the engine is now coming from the back of the car.
It is,
So how does that all work, and why do you put the radiator in the back?
We put it in the back mainly for weight distribution, totally for weight distribution. It is quite a heavy unit when filled full of water, as you can imagine. So we are trying to offset the weight of a big 6-cylinder engine, so we do.
And of course, it's running out in the back
Everything to
of the
back.
car, essentially.
Well, there will be a lot in the back when we're finished. But as far as I know, this is the first car that has been built around CG. What we call CG in race cars is center of gravity. So center of gravity is something you can't see, obviously, and it often gets totally left behind. If you go for professional motorsport, proper motorsport, all the cars are built. Everything is thought about lowering the center of gravity. Formula 1 car would have an extremely low center of gravity. A single seater driver sits lower than the wheels almost. So this is the first drift car I know of, and all our holes and everything, we touched on what they're for, but they're actually reducing weight. If I can reduce weight 18 inches off the floor pan, I know I'm reducing center of gravity. So this is probably...
And do you think that's obviously going to make it easier to drive? Or
it's
more
going to make it
better?
handle better. Right?
Yeah.
Everything is going to be better. Like,
So I think what we're touching on here is that you're not essentially just building a drift car to be a drift car anymore. The engineering in drift cars have now gone to a point where you're custom building a machine to do a job.
Yeah.
It's not like taking a road car, taking something that you would see normally on the road, putting a cage in it, putting a handbrake in it, a bit more power. We've now gone to a point where we're literally building it within the regulations
Yeah.
to something that's completely purpose-built to do
Exactly.
one job, which is be as good a drift car as possible.
The best possible.
And I think a lot of people don't notice that. They see the shiny cars on the track, they might see it, and even myself, you'll see a very well-built car. But a lot of the thought that goes into it maybe can be forgotten about, because it is now getting to a point where, even though it was a very niche and sort of underappreciated motorsport, now the technology is the same as any other motorsport that's being used. It's crazy.
yeah, and it takes, like, I mean, for us with what we do, it takes a lot of years to come up with a lot of these designs and everything we do. And also, there is so many Silvias out there, and if you, like the first guy that did like a replaceable crash structure, well then the next year everyone had it.
For sure.
So we're trying to do something different, we're trying to do something that other people can't do, and just showcase what we can do and why it's technically better what we do.
Exactly. Well, thanks for showing us around the car. This thing is insane. We've had an awesome time here at Group D, checking out their amazing work and builds. And we also got to learn a little something about how a production car becomes a competitive drift car. If you guys like the section and want us to check out more garages later in the year, make sure you comment below. We'll see you guys soon for more of Garage Tours.